Great to be back at Duke. Thank you for inviting me to speak here today. This year's theme, Small Act, Big Impact, is supposed to allow the speakers to describe how their small acts have had a large impact on something that's important in their life. But I'm going to flip that theme on its head a little bit and talk about how the small acts of others have had a profound impact on my life. See, I'm a dead man walking. Statistics would tell you that I shouldn't be here today, and those same statistics would tell you that if I were fortunate enough to be here today, that I wouldn't be able to stand, let alone speak, hear, or see all of you. And that's because exactly 7 years and 7 months to the day, I was hiking in a stream in the Talkeetna Mountains of Alaska, leading a group of 6 of my peers on a hiking trip. And so we had been hiking in a stream for about an hour when I came across a small, still pool of water on the inside bank of the stream that had 2 fish in it. So having been out in the bush for almost a full month at this point and not having eaten real food, we had our Lord of the Flies moment and spent the next 45 minutes or so trying to catch these 2 small fish. And after successfully doing so, I mean really small, there's no way we were going to be eating them, but there's one of them. And after we caught the 2 fish, I then decided to move to the front of the line and lead the group. And about 35 minutes later, I came around a large rock outcropping that formed what was essentially a blind corner. And when I came around the bend and could see what was on the other side, I saw a large gold mass. Now, every bear expert in the world, every single one, will tell you that the last thing you want to do when you surprise a grizzly bear is run. But that's exactly what I did. And so I turned around and started running, screaming, "Bear, bear, bear," to warn the 6 people behind me that couldn't see what I had just saw. And the bear slammed me from the back like a truck, face down into the stream. And after that, the bear continued to attack me, biting underneath my right arm, my left leg. And before I could really understand what was going on, the bear picked me up by my head in its mouth. And so I have 2 skull fractures, one here and one here. So if you can picture the jaw of a bear coming down over my head and picking me up, that's exactly what happened. And while I was dangling there in its mouth, I was trying to punch it in the nose frantically, where bears are incredibly sensitive, hoping it would drop me. But I heard my own skull crack. And the bear dropped me. And after that, unable to stand at this point, I started to crawl towards my bag, which had the personal locator beacon in it, a one-way communication device that would have enabled me to send a signal notifying the authorities that there was an emergency. And so as I started to crawl towards my bag, the bear came back and bit me in the back of my neck at the base of my skull. And so as a last resort, I curled up in a ball and played dead in the stream. I never saw the bear stand up on 2 hind legs, given that it attacked me from the back, but I then saw the bear leap over me and heard my friend behind me, Sam Gottsigan, screaming while he was getting attacked. And so it turned out that Sam Gottsigan had come back down the bank of the stream to see if he could help me and the others that were still stuck in the water with the bear. And so as I heard his screams, I then continued to crawl towards my bag to try to get the personal locator beacon out. And when I finally reached my bag, my friend Noah, who I had not realized had been attacked at this point, had a large laceration on his scalp. And together, we struggled with the beacon, trying to open it by pushing the tab at the top of it, hoping it would open and activate. But the tab broke, and the beacon didn't open, and it didn't activate. And so for the first time since the attack occurred, I genuinely believed that I would not be making it out of the bush alive. Lying over 100 miles north of Anchorage, bleeding profusely from the head, I thought to myself, there's no way I'm making it out. And so, having been one of the 2 most seriously injured guys out of the group of 7, I was quickly moved to the bank of the stream by another friend, Sam Melman, who held my head for about the next 20 minutes. And as we waited there, and he held my head, I asked him to get the camera from my bag so I could make a video and he could film me saying goodbye to my family, once again fully accepting death and the idea that I would not be making it out of the bush alive. And so during this time, Shane and Noah, fortunately, had been able to open and activate the beacon. They had taken a pocket knife and pried open the two pieces of plastic that held it together, and the light on the beacon was now flashing in a pattern that indicated that the signal had been sent and received. But we didn't know who would be coming, and we didn't know what they would be coming in. And so some of you might be asking at this point, well, what happened to the bear? And so till the day I die, I'll believe that my friend Victor kicked the bear in the face. As I mentioned before, their noses are incredibly sensitive, so if you ever wind up in a situation that close with a bear, I would recommend doing that. But if there was anyone that was strong enough and brave enough to kick the bear, it was him. And so after the other 5 guys had set up a tent and moved me in, Noah quickly cut off my soaking wet clothes, which had become cold in the frigid water. Sam Boaz, who happened to be a trained EMT, applied pressure to my wounds on my leg, my arm, my head, and my neck in order to stop the bleeding. And Victor lied on top of me, bare-chested, to share his body heat with me so that I wouldn't become hypothermic. And so my rule in the tent became, do not fall asleep because you're not sure if you're going to wake back up. And so 6 hours later, the first helicopter came. And this is a real picture of it. It was a state trooper and a pilot on board, and we first heard it thinking that it may not be looking for us because the rhythm of its blades was so faint and far away. But 10 to 15 minutes later, it was clear that it was coming for us as it landed a few hundred feet from our tent. The trooper and pilot on board quickly made the decision to take 4 of the people that could still walk with them, and the trooper waited with me, Sam Gottsigan, and Sam Boaz, and we waited for the Alaska Air National Guard to come with a full medical team. And so 2 hours later, in a Pavehawk helicopter, the Alaska Air National Guard landed right next to the tent and quickly put me on a stretcher, lifted me above the bush, and loaded me on. And as I was lying there in the helicopter, I asked the pararescueman who would be by my side for the next hour or so if I could fall asleep. To which he said, just give me 45 more minutes. And so I remember landing at the hospital in Anchorage and being rolled into the emergency room, where a doctor came alongside my bed with a phone to her ear, and I heard her say, he's going to look fine, don't worry. Turns out, for the most part, she was right. And it also turns out that the person on the other side of that call was my mom. I then remember being rolled into the operating room where I had a mask placed over my face, and 10 hours later, I woke up. I had had an 8-hour surgery, I had 2 skull fractures repaired, had lost half my blood, and had over 200 staples put in my body to close all my wounds. And so, if it had not been for Sam Boaz's training as an EMT, Sam Gottsigan coming back down into the stream to see if he could help, if it had not been for Sam Melman pulling me to the bank of the stream, if it had not been for Noah and Shane activating the beacon, if it had not been for the successful takeoffs and landings and all of the training of the Alaska State Troopers and the Alaska Air National Guard, and if it had not been for the extensive practice and experience of my medical team, I don't think I would be here today. And so, 7 years and 7 months later, I find myself on the verge of law school graduation at GW in Washington, D.C. And earlier this year, when deciding where I wanted to work, for reasons I can't fully explain, Alaska quickly rose to the top of the list. And so I decided to apply for clerkship positions in the state court system, hoping that I would have the opportunity to give back to a state and its people that have given me so much. And so I flew up to Anchorage in late October to interview with a few judges. And after the first, as I made my way towards the door to shake the judge's hand and say goodbye, she said to me, "I know your story," to which I really wasn't sure how to respond. And she then went on to explain that her husband had been in the same Alaska Air National Guard troop that picked me up over 7 years ago, and that he distinctly remembered the night of my rescue. He is another person whose name I didn't know before that interview in October, who has enabled me to be here right now. And so next year, I'll be fortunate enough to go back to Alaska and work for that same judge and give back to the community that has given me a second chance on life. And so I also have to say thank you to my family, who's all here today. My sister Hannah and my mom and dad, Liz and Will. Hannah, I know you're my biggest advocate, and thank you so much for nominating me to speak here today and giving me the rare opportunity to tell this story on my own terms. Mom and Dad, I will never know what it was like to get that phone call over 4,000 miles away, but what I do know is, without your love and support, I couldn't be here right now. I owe you everything. And so, it's not always clear how our small actions fit into the larger picture or what they look like from 30,000 feet. Our individual acts in isolation may appear insignificant, but when viewed in a greater context, often provide a critical link to the final outcome. And having been the recipient of the benevolent small acts of so many, it's become very clear to me that each one of our small acts is a smaller piece of a much larger puzzle, and that in the aggregate, those actions can come together and create something that was impossible to see at the start. I am living and breathing proof of that. And so, my relationship with Alaska is a bit complex, as you can probably tell. But I once read that it's the land of superlatives. The mountains are taller, the rivers are wider, and the personalities and resiliency of its people are larger and stronger than anywhere else. And a part of my soul will always be in Alaska. And so as my time in law school comes to a close, and my next Alaskan adventure approaches, I can only hope that my small acts will have as profound of an impact as their small acts have had on me. And so as they say in Alaska, let's go north to the future.